Honored to be here. I'm going to go real fast. Jeff and Andy, you're invited to dinner with John Raymer and Susan Cannon and some others if you can make it. Just thought I'd mention that. I'm going to go real fast. And what I found worked real well at Amazon, and you can download my 66-minute interaction with Amazon on Amazon as the hub of the world brain. And let me say that nothing I say is endorsed by Jeff Bezos. I'm not sure he even knows I'm on planet Earth. I think Amazon is the hub of the world brain, and that's my pitch, not theirs. So I'm going to go real fast. I recommend that you try and see that briefing because you'll get a sense of the larger picture. In my view, bloggers and hackers, and I opened the first hackers conference in New York, Hackers on Planet Earth in 1994, and wearing sunglasses and a suit, and Jello Biafra, then a little-known artist, today presidential candidate for the Biafrans. He had the voiceover, and we had no idea in 1994 that it would nail Dick Cheney today. I am just absolutely stunned. And if you do nothing else, read my reviews of 1% Doctrine and Vice, Dick Cheney and the hijacking of the American presidency. That man is guilty of no fewer than 25 impeachable offenses, and I itemize them in my review. Yeah, and I'm an estranged moderate Republican. I don't know where the American fascists came from. Although CIA imported 100 Nazis a year, every year after World War II, and we have Otto Reich and Karl Rove as the lower level generations. Okay, we're going to go fast here. I'm going to run through these slides at lightning speed just to give you an overall gestalt. How many people have already seen the brief? Okay, all right. Not many. Now we know the overachievers. Let me just go real fast. We're at the very beginning. Jeff Bezos has that right. Everything up to here, including Microsoft, has been shit. Okay? From here on out is where it really starts hyping up. Who am I? I was told I had to have this slide. Oil brat, 20 years in Latin America, infantry, recovering spy, overly educated. I'm not an IT guy, but I've done advanced IT, and I've helped create the steering groups for the CIA and others. And I am the world's most pissed off end user. None of you can hold a candle to me. So we're going to go real fast, and this time I'm just going to tell you, public intelligence and influence is about to take off. We are about to bury rule by secrecy. Civil affairs is the focal point. The intelligence guys need to go back in their box. Bloggers, not informants, are key. The FBI is about to try and hire 2,000 informants in a Soviet police-style approach to security. That's idiocy. 4 reforms. Ron Paul, I didn't have a chance to put in my image there, but I believe we're going to have to come back to transpartisanship. It's very serious, relative cost war versus peace. This is how we're going to do it. Like this guy, like this, like this. Let's go back to that. Okay, hardware. Come back to that. Open money. Nice. Open culture, open networks. Oh, this is a great slide. We'll spend 5 hours on this one. Open society, open government. Other opens, including open carry. Blog this. Open carry across the country. That's that pistol down there in the bottom. And, oh, by the way, I think radar detectors are covered by the founder's intention that we be able to defend ourselves. So then we'll talk about what a shitty world the last 50 years have created. And then maybe start on bloggers and what you can do. Amazon is the hub. Really high-level intellectual stuff. Why we're going to win. This is a very serious slide. Next step, warning notice. Warning, warning, warning. For the truly indiscriminate, share it all. Okay, open everything, you rule. But bloggers, as they are now, don't rule. Bloggers, as Linux is organized, where you grab onto an issue or something and you are part of a structured citizen journalism blogging thing that lets no evil doing go unnoticed, that rules. I'll speak for sushi, I'm cheap, but it has to be really good sushi. This brief is at /genome, but look for 4.2. This is what I've created before I go. I am not making this up. Dare to want it all. All right, any questions? All right, now we'll go through it a little slower. And I have words in the notes format. You know, Mark Twain said if I'd had a little more time, I would have written a shorter letter. So the words in the notes format are all of the things that I very cleverly calculated you absolutely had to know. But here I'm going to go fairly fast. What you need to know is I'm a spy saying spying doesn't work. Okay, now General Zinni has a quote. He and I both opposed the war in Iraq. We were called traitors for our trouble. General Zinni is on record as saying that 80% of what he needed to know as the commander of the Central Command, with 12 wars going on in his AOR, was open source information. And if he knew where to look, meaning if he knew who to ask, another 16% was available to him. At the end of the day, only 4% of General Zinni's command information was coming from secret sources and methods. Well, today I publish a free Global Challenges the Week in Review covering the 10 threats, the 12 policies, and the 8 challengers at a cost of less than $1,000 a week. It's costing you $1.2 billion a week to produce the President's Daily Brief for a guy that can't read. 1.2 billion, 1,000. What's wrong with this picture? So we are idiots to be allowing our government to spend our hard-earned dollars, $60 billion, it's actually closer to $70 billion, for the 4% we can steal, next to nothing on open sources in 183 languages we don't speak. And our military-industrial complex is also idiocy, and General Smedley Butler, the highest decorated Marine, said, war is a racket. War is a racket. War is a racket, and the only reason it's happening is because the American public is lethargic. Blog that. You are the Paul Reveres and Patrick Henrys of our generation. Bottom-up horizontal connection is key. Sharing at all levels, not top-down control. There are 4 major reforms. This is very important, sophisticated stuff. I love Naomi Klein and No Logo and her new book coming out. If you bloggers self-organize and attach yourself like leeches to specific issues, corporations, organizations, challenges, whatever, you will be the intelligence Minutemen of this century. The power is in your hands. There aren't enough guns to kill us all, and Halliburton can't build the jails fast enough to keep us down. So I think we're at a turning point. I think Bezos is right. I think we're at the very beginning of a historic tidal shift in power, restoring the Constitution. National security reform, it's idiocy how we're spending the money. We can spend it much better. Reality-based budgeting, new concept. I don't know how many of you are following this, but the Comptroller General has told Congress the United States of America is insolvent. We're out of Schlitz. We literally have no money to make it to the next decade. Now, there's some very easy solutions. I could eliminate all income taxes tomorrow and have more than enough money to fund the government by using some other guy's bright idea. We tax the Federal Reserve at 0.0006, doubles our money until we decide to put them out of business permanently, because we certainly should not have central banks. And finally, I think before 2008, you should blog for electoral reform. Jim Turner, who was Ralph Nader's number 2, Naderites for Gore 2000, and then we're working on this transpartisan thing. We've put together an electoral reform pledge, and it's my view that any member of Congress, any member of the Senate that refuses to sign both the constitutional pledge, supporting the Constitution, and the electoral reform pledge should be put out of business. And I believe that will be 95% of all of these people. It may be time to literally dump Congress on its ass and start over. Now, Ron Paul, and I like Ron Paul, and I'm an estranged moderate Republican leaning toward libertarian, but he's only, like Al Gore, a one-trick pony right now. Okay, he's got a very narrow focus. And what's missing from his deal is the willingness to announce a sunshine cabinet today that has libertarians, Greens, reforms, moderate Republicans, independents, conservative Democrats. And before 2008, between now and 2008, he needs to produce a sustainable, balanced budget that wages peace. Now, I can do that in my sleep overnight. Therefore, it shouldn't be too hard for him to get from here to there, but he's not willing to do that. Right now, Ron Paul is the Al Gore of politics. He's got one soundbite. Al Gore has climate change. Ron Paul has, restore the Constitution. He's going to go into the same hole that Howard Dean went into if he doesn't broaden his act. And I say this in a sense of tough love because I want Ron Paul, Bill Bradley, Sam Nunn, Colin Powell even. He Uncle Tom'd himself, but we could bring him back. And just as a quick side joke, if Bill Clinton's our first black president, then Condi Rice is our first blonde bimbo valley girl as Secretary of State. This is a serious slide. It was created by Medard Gabel. He created the World Game with Buckminster Fuller. He runs a Small Picture Little World. And I have retained him. We have put together a budget for $2 million a year. For $2 million a year, we can create an Earth game that rapidly scales from locality to state to nation to region to global over the next 6 years. And we can all play ourselves. This is significantly better than what the Department of Defense Department is planning, which is where they're going to create an Earth game where they tell you what you're thinking. Okay, I'm not making this up. The Defense Department simulation thing, it's all in the notes. The problem with Washington is the government has gotten stupid to the point that it can't write a statement of work. And so they ask the contractors to write a statement of work, and the contractors write a statement of work saying, you need more of what I haven't been able to sell. And the government says, oh yeah, right, good. Put it in the budget. This is real shit. I can crack all 10 of the top-level threats to humanity in less than 25 years for less than 1/3 of what the world is spending on the military. Blog that. So what we did was got a bunch of smart people together, including Jim Turner and Joe Trippi. Joe Trippi's agreed that he's not going to build a big bat for any individual candidate. He's going to build a big bat for we the people. And I will tell you the price of buying back the United States government, it's $500 million a year. In the early 90s, Newt Gingrich and the Republicans got together. Their plan is now on the street. It's been exposed by a Columbia professor. Go blog it, find it, blog it. They concluded that they could buy the United States government from school board to State House to White House for $300 million a year, and by golly, they did. And every single member of Congress is impeachable for having abdicated their Article I responsibilities under the Constitution and serving as foot soldiers for the president and his mendacious vice president. So we're going to put it all together, an Earth game with Earth policy, embedded Earth budgets. As soon as you, and this is something bloggers can do, as soon as you take every budget, local to national, and you make it transparent, all kinds of good things happen because people start glomming onto this stuff and they start connecting budgets. For example, CNN. How many of you saw the CNN thing on the earmark for the $2 million for the rural airport? Okay, I don't blame you for not watching television. I see it in elevators. They had a story on $2 million given to a Podunk County airport that had 12 Cessnas, and it was to lengthen the runway. And it turned out that $2 million was a payback to a very arrogant corporate person who had a factory there that wanted to be able to fly in on his Learjet, inspect the factory, and leave town without having ever had to actually meet anyone from that town or, heavens, stay in the hotel. Okay? Now, if that were transparent, I guarantee you everybody in that county would be calling their congressman and say, hey, asshole, we got lots of different things we can do with that $2 million. Don't you ever do this or you're recalled. I want to see us blog recalls. I want to see us all over these people between now and November 2008. And if we don't have electoral reform before 2008, it's your fault. I love this guy. He and I both spoke at Hackers on Planet Earth. And my presentations at Hackers are now on my website as compressed quick times. Bill Gates is on record as saying open source is communist. Bullshit. If open source is communist, then Microsoft is fascist. And I'm sorry, I know they're a sponsor here. I'm here to offer Microsoft a deal. We'll let them live if they go to stable, transparent application program interfaces, dump beast, and start over. Okay? A lot of good in Microsoft. This is what we don't have because Bill Gates has migrated and mutated his application program interfaces since time immemorial. It's no longer good enough to push second-rate software with first-rate marketing. I'm here to tell Microsoft we want your money. We'll let you live. Buy Sun before Google does. Google is making $1 for every $10 million of fantasy cash they're selling. They're using. It's not going to last long. $1 earnings for every $10 million of stockholder-provided cash, this is not cool. And if they buy Sun for open office, I guarantee you it will become closed. Okay? So you guys really need to be paying attention right now. These are 18 analytic functionalities that we need on a desktop today. The closest we've gotten is Toozle, T-O-O-Z-L, created by DARPA Strong Angel. We hand it out on a flash drive. Everybody in a stabilization area then can immediately begin using OpenOffice Plus, including geospatial tagging and all this other stuff. It is absolutely essential that Google, Microsoft, Sun, Amazon, Intel, and Cisco come together. And oh, by the way, you're the first to know, I sent, what's his name at Cisco? The CEO a letter the other day proposing that he provide us all with routers that have embedded storage and grub so we can kill the Googleplex. Okay? Think about that. If we have Cisco routers that are like moats and we can all kind of self-connect and stuff, bye, Larry. This is really exciting stuff. And I'm here to tell you, I'm not working on saving the U.S. or saving Europe. What we do does not matter jack shit. What Brazil, China, Iran, India, Indonesia, Russia, Venezuela, and the wild cards, like Turkey, South Africa, Malaysia, and Pakistan do, that's what matters. And C.K. Prahalad has nailed it. Other books have said this before. If you confiscate all the wealth in the world, which I do not advocate, all you have is a $5 bill for every one of the 5 billion poor on the planet. For what we have spent on the Iraq War, I could have given a free cell phone to every one of the 5 billion poor on the planet. I could have taken the 10% residual capabilities on DoD satellites, abandoned communication satellites, and I could have provided free T1 to the Southern Hemisphere. Blog that. That's the kind of stuff we have to do. Because if we don't empower the 5 billion at the bottom of the pyramid to create what Yochai Benkler calls wealth of networks, Thomas Stewart, wealth of knowledge, Alvin Toffler, my good friend, revolutionary wealth, Barry Catter, infinite wealth. If we don't do that, those 5 billion people, instead of producing wealth that stabilizes the earth, are going to produce plagues, epidemics, criminal gangs, drugged up people. Ralph Peters, a friend of mine, and the bottom line here is the only path to wine, women, and wealth for badasses anywhere on the planet that have no money is guns. Okay? I became the #1 Amazon reviewer by accident. I joined the Marine Corps because I was overeducated in the first place, and it had the desired effect. I'm telling you, as an intellectual construct, if one guy like me knows how to solve this, why the hell don't the rest of us? And what's happening here is we're at the very beginning. We're just starting to come out of our little eggshell. Okay? Lionel Tiger had a wonderful book called The Manufacture of Evil. When the industrial era began, it broke the connection between kinship and trust. And it started treating people as commodities. And then we lost sight of our government and we allowed the corporations to buy the government. The United States of America no longer represents we the people. But you can change that. This is very important. Kofi Annan gets it. High-tech trash, toxicity. I mean, we're between Pandora's poison, chlorine, and electronic toxic trash, we are killing this planet. And we're making it very, very hard to come back. And oh, by the way, come on, let's get to some elegant code, please. I'm really pissed off right now because Norton 360 and Microsoft Windows is like a syphilitic whore having sex with a leper. And what comes out of that, you have no idea. Have a nice day. Now, this is reality. This spy world that I know very well, and I do an improv for 4 hours every Hackers late at night on everything you ever wanted to know about spying and didn't know who to ask, and I'll try and finish real fast so that we'll have lots of time for questions, and I'll be around all day. But in order to call a baseball game, the Signals Intelligence Service will plant a bug in the dugout and try and listen to the coach's instructions and call the game that way. The clandestine intelligence service will hire one of the players on each side and try and get them to drop or catch the ball on command and try and rig the game that way. The imagery intelligence guys will take a picture of the ball field every 3 days, try and call it that way. The measurements and signatures analysis guys will sniff the ball as it's leaving the bat, and when it doesn't work, ask for $10 billion more. The open source intelligence guys tells everyone in the audience, you catch it, it's an out, and here's $100 for the ball. This is not rocket science. Okay? And the reason it's not working today is because we have a military-industrial complex that profits from secrecy and war, and it does not profit from efficiency and peace. Blog that. Thank you. I agree with you. And I am seriously pissed off. Open spectrum. Why are we selling spectrum? Screw that shit. We own it. Get over it. The sooner we get to open spectrum, the sooner we get to smart devices, the sooner we get to everything that's good about airwaves of, by, and for we the people. I don't think anybody unwilling to support open spectrum should be elected to any office anywhere. Open money. Now, we're very lucky to have Michael Linton speaking tomorrow, so I've cut my original 7 slides down to 3, and I'm going to just blow over that. But the bottom line here is that central banking is an evil cancer. These people are selling us credit they don't have so they can take profits they don't deserve out of our pockets. That's nuts. The United States government is constitutionally chartered to print money on the good faith and credit of all of us and not pay interest. Why are we being such fools? Well, unfortunately, if you fight them, you get assassinated. Lincoln and Kennedy were both about to print money and not borrow from the banks. I can't connect those 2 dots, but I can tell you they're side by side. All right, open culture, content. I'm still trying to talk my son, my 18-year-old, who's here with me. I have 3 children by a beautiful lady. One of them's a digital artist. He's here. The other one is a warlord, master, whatever. And the third one's a wide receiver. And so I have a really nice spread there. I'm sick and tired of trolls. I gave up on Wikipedia because I don't have time to deal with morons. I believe that everybody has the God-given right to create and to share. And that in any given environment like Wikipedia, only the masters should be allowed to destroy, or only the people who created the content in the first place should be allowed to destroy. That's how you get to collective intelligence. You don't get to collective intelligence with editing wars and slander wars and all this other baloney. Certainly support all that. We can talk about this another time. I created this one in the 1990s, but what's important for you to understand is that the entire industrial complex today is still in Quadrant 1. They are nowhere near Quadrant 2 collaborative work. I've been in Quadrant 3 since 1997. Peter Drucker and Forbes ASAP, August 28th, said that we've spent the last 50 years focusing on the T in IT. We need to spend the next 50 years focusing on the I in IT. I believe that because the computer assholes did not consult librarians. What we have today is a big electronic wastebasket. Okay? There is absolutely no structure in there. There's no connectivity. There's no user organization. Even Amazon, my beloved Amazon. I have over 900 reviews, and if you want to see all my 900 reviews, you have to go through every single one in chronological order. Why can't I organize my own reviews? So that you could decide that you only want to see the ones on emerging threats, or the ones on democracy, or the ones on pollution, or whatever. I mean, the whole electronic world is out to lunch right now. And when Bezos talks about innovation, I think what he is saying is we're about to see end-user-driven innovation. And that's where you guys come in. I mean, I love that cartoon where these three guys are, I saw it on SRA International's office door one day, not by coincidence. Two guys are saying, all right, we're building a new system, and the middle frame says, well, we'll never see an end user, and so the third frame is, okay, make it so it crashes on every typo. That's where the computer industry is today, and I don't like it. And then finally, you have organizational intelligence. When you have a Rolodex that you inherit, it has a name and a phone number. It doesn't have all that other contact management information. Where did you meet this guy? Why? When? Where? What? So we are completely out to lunch. Now, Spivak created his own thing. I'll tell you, the U.S. government is still in this lower quadrant called the web. Now, my CTO counterpart is the architect for FirstGov, and we're doing what we can, and there's some really good initiatives in the U.S. government, including GSA's Collaborative Expedition Workshop. But the reality is the federal government is broken in every possible way, and it's going to be localized, bottom-up resilience networks. They're going to save us. That's where you guys come in. Open society, open government. Now, I don't want you to think I'm Jane Fonda on steroids. I certainly am not. Marine Corps infantry officers and clandestine case officers generally tend to be just to the right or left of Attila the Hun. But a very distinguished gentleman, Peter Peterson, the chairman of the Foreign Relations Council, has written a book called Running on Empty, How the Democratic and Republican Parties Are Destroying the Republic. They are. They are the Al Capones of our era. They displaced the League of Women Voters because the League of Women Voters had the temerity to suggest that they should include third, fourth, and fifth party advocates. That's why I support Lawrence Lessig when he says we need to broadcast this, but we don't need to stop there. We need to say, hey, you guys are out of the debate business. We're running a global national debate, and not only are we going to expect every presidential and vice presidential candidate to address each one of the 12 policies, 10 threats, and 8 challengers, but we're going to demand that you identify your cabinet beforehand to participate in cabinet-on-cabinet debates. And if you can't form a cabinet between now and November 2008, you're not even in the running. Get out of town. This is not rocket science. This is really simple common sense. And I'm not good at common sense. That's my wife's department. Okay? But this is really simple common sense. If you can't form a cabinet between now and 2008, then you're a sleazeball who is selling us platitudes, and we don't need it. I'm on my best behavior with you guys, by the way. Okay, so the other opens. Open search, open skies, open borders, open schools. I'll tell you something. We're the survivors of our educational system. Advanced child care combined with low security prisons, or high security if you're in Los Angeles. But the point is, our educational system stinks. It beats the creativity out of kids by the time they're in the 4th grade. It forces you to become a blogger or hacker in order to become creative. So you guys are the lifeboat. I said the same thing to hackers, only in hackers, they got started way before you guys did. In this last hackers, we had hackers carrying hacker babies. And we had daddy hackers bringing son hackers. And I just said, oh, there's hope for the planet. All right, this was really good. So blog this. All right, now I'm going to go very fast because you can see this later. But the bottom line is we've gone from America the Beautiful to America the Shit in just 2 administrations. Now, I will tell you, Clinton is equally to blame. Madeleine Albright very deliberately refused to address terrorism. We knew Iran was behind Khobar Towers. We knew Iran and Hezbollah, rather than al-Qaeda, were doing the embassies. They were testing us, and we failed that test. And oh, by the way, when you do tomahawks into Afghanistan, it takes 6 hours for them to get there. So by the time they get there, you just get the goats and a few tents. And oh, by the way, one of them didn't explode, so we gifted, they're starting to learn gifting in Washington. We gifted bin Laden with a tomahawk he sold to the Chinese for $10 million, an unexploded tomahawk. Okay, your government is insane. I think the Iranians, we know they have the Sunbird missile. I think they also have they funded the Pakistani nuclear program. I think they have a nuclear warhead for it. This is done by Webster Tarpley. The supply line from Kuwait to Baghdad is 400 clicks long. I think they can chop it into pieces anytime. The United States of America is in Iraq today because the Iranians ran a perfect strategic deception operation on us, and because Dick Cheney and Joe Lieberman are the top representatives of Israel in our country, and they walked into it. And they're not concerned about the dead. Henry Kissinger undermined the Vietnam peace negotiations to help Nixon, meaning that 4 years later he settled for exactly the same terms, only there were 20,000 more American dead. Henry Kissinger is a war criminal who cannot travel overseas anymore. If he goes to Paris, he's toast. Okay? Now, I believe we need to start blogging retrospective impeachments. I'm not saying we need to hang them or tar them or feather them, just out them. I think it's time for citizen investigative journalism to go deep and go back and go current. And people need to understand they can't get away with this stuff. And they're not cutting that supply line for the same reason the Viet Cong did not cut our fuel lines when I was in Vietnam. Because we do ourselves more damage just by being there than they could possibly do with interdictive action. These are, you know, Darfur is the Hollywood genocide. There's 17 others that I look at. Water is going to be the next big thing. Energy, you know, the same week that Dick Cheney was meeting secretly with Enron and Exxon is publishing two full-page ads around the world that are lies. There was a Wired magazine article on a two-way energy grid. There is no lack of knowledge here. There is absolutely no lack of solution, and there is also no lack of money. What is lacking is the popular political will to exercise our God-given right to be in charge of our own destiny. The United Nations has identified these 10 threats, and I'll spend just a second on them. You should note that proliferation is caused by the 5 permanent members of the Security Council of the United Nations, and the United States, China, Russia, the other 2, they are the proliferators, period. And then, of course, small arms and landmines and resistant tuberculosis from Russian prisons and resistant other diseases from Eastern Europe. That's proliferating. The U.S. government is, I got thrown off Fox News for saying the global war on terror wasn't real. Well, it's not. Okay? I mean, until we can get to one man, one bullet for the top 6,000, we can contain the next level, and we can provide a quality of life for everybody on the planet at the lowest level, we're not going to get it. The Air Force solution for terrorism is to kill one guy in an entire village, which of course creates 100 to 200 additional terrorists because of that indiscriminate war crime. Okay? I know. Thank you. Thank you. It's just nuts. And it's nuts because the media isn't doing their job, and so it falls to you. And I'll skip over this, 10 state-based challenges, 4 threat types, 4 forces after next. We can't do it without you. Now, I publish a free weekly report, and my dream is to have someone adopt every zip code and start doing that weekly report for their zip code. And then those little reports will start having babies, and it'll start spreading. And eventually it will get to where we have a good grip on the 10 threats, 12 policies, and 8 challengers. And oh, by the way, China is exporting Chinese. It's got a very deliberate long-term Chinese womb strategy. It is going to take over Argentina. It is teaching Chinese free across the third world. Everywhere where the United States has an information center, it's building one that's 3 to 6 times better. And oh, by the way, you can walk into theirs. Ours, you have to go through a 30-minute strip search of every cavity before you can get in. Okay? It's just nuts. And And now we have a wiki. We've created 30 expert wikis. I've paid to identify the top 10 people on the planet. Oh, I had some here. Thank you very much. Thank you. How many more minutes do I have? Oh, perfect. 30 minutes. Great. I'm going to try and wrap up real quick. Do we want a lot of questions? Okay. All right. Then I'm going to go real quick. We have 30 wikis I want you to join. Amazon. This is really important. We are in a 100-year war that we started losing in 1988 when the Saudi Arabians, knowing that the Americans are seriously stupid at every level, began funding madrasas around the world. There is a race for the mind of man. And the only way we can win against hate-filled ideologies that teach children by rote, that tell them that Jews are pigs and monkeys and that Americans are right there with them, the only way we can beat that is if we can provide free online education by the call in any language 24/7. That's the deal. Schools are not going to do it. We have to connect the world. And I just came from a wonderful meeting with the commander of the Army's new Civil Affairs Brigade. He gets it. Our job in the next 15 to 20 years is to hand out cell phones everywhere, first one per village, then one per neighborhood, then one per household. Our job is to get all that DoD residual satellite capability pumped up. Our job is to take back all that bandwidth. We do not need to sell that bandwidth. We should not sell that bandwidth. That should be a treasonous act against the public. And then we have to really get into all this understanding perceptions. I mean, America went into Iraq with the White House not understanding that the Shiites were in the majority and loved Iran. Howard Bloom wrote a perfectly prescient book, Global Brain, about that coming. I'm writing a new book. I've proposed an open source agency, $3 billion a year at FOC. That's $10 million a year for each of the lower tier topics in open source, countries and stuff. And then I want 50 community information sharing networks with 114 and 119 numbers, where you can send in, for example, 3 different people see a suspicious person, they send in a 114 report. As my 18-year-old would say, that's a clue. And a 119 is if you see something that seriously scares you or you think there's a bank robbery or an improvised explosive device, you send a 119 and that moves everybody with a cell phone away from you. Okay? So there's lots of different things we can do. We have some advantages. Katrina was a major turning point in public perception. We are moving to a new bottom-up sustainable consensus. We can do all of these things better than CIA can do it. Yep. And we can focus on the green. You know, when I finish, we can go, amen, brother. But we can focus on the green. Okay? Your government is stupid. And they're stupid deliberately. The intelligence community does not do open source information because they like to think that the cabinet departments are doing their open source information. That's not true. The cabinet departments don't know how to do decision support. What they know how to do is take stakeholder interests and turn them into policy that increases budget share. That is not what I call reality-based budgeting. Okay? We can focus on the green and we can get to reality-based budgeting. This may strike you as altruistic, but it's not. It's very pragmatic. Sun Tzu said you have to defeat the enemy without fighting. Well, the best way to defeat the enemy without fighting is to have no enemies. And I'll explain that some other time. Oh, here, DoD is developing sentient world simulation. Go look for that on Grub. That's nuts. The matrix expands. So we need to flip it over from most of our money on secret to most of our money on co-intelligence, like Tom Atlee's co-intelligence. I'm trying to get Amazon to understand that if they create InfoNet for the public and they harness Amazon authors on every topic and they harness Amazon readers in every locale, now we have readers who care about poverty in this zip code, with bloggers who know how to communicate in this zip code, with global experts on poverty who know how to inform, and now you bring the budget up, you bring the knowledge down, and magic happens. Okay? This is easy. All you have to do is do it. Now, I've given you at GNOME, it should be 4.2. I think it's 4.2. That's this version. And then at 4.3, 4.3, which I'll post when I get back to the hotel tonight, 4.3 will have a really nice collage. I sent Bill Bradley and Mayor Bloomberg a collage and tried to say, look, Bradley, America's ready for a smart president. Why don't you talk to Ron Paul or John McCain? Why don't you guys do this cabinet? They didn't answer. Politics today has gotten so dirty it's not worth anybody's time if they've got a brain. Well, I don't have a brain, I have a soul. And I believe that America needs to get back in the business of managing itself. So you've seen that. Any questions?
All right. Thank you. First of all, thank you. And despite political differences, I think the underlying tone is that we have the power. We have.
What political differences?
Well, I mean, just saying, like, everyone has a different idea political-wise, but...
No one here who doesn't agree with me is getting out alive.
Well, he was in the CIA, I'll give him that.
No, they couldn't handle it.
No, but it's hopefully it's very thought-provoking, and I'm hoping that the questions are going to be equally as thought-provoking as what was just presented. So we've got the mics, Andy, my father, and other people. So just raise your hand. Do not speak, please, until you have the mic, because we have overflow to worry about.
Back there, Mitch Ratcliffe.
Well, I guess if Robert, you choose whoever. And
No, that's fine.
No, you're the man.
Yeah, go ahead with him.
So, Bob, it's great to hear you.
Bob is the guy on TV that gets killed a lot. I'm Robert.
I remember when it was Bob.
But it's not on. Can you guys hear him?
Not on? Is it on?
Now it's on.
Okay. The administration recently determined that our ability to monitor American citizens in communication with people overseas was all broken, and so they passed a new law which allowed them to look more deeply into our lives without any warrants. Can you reflect on that with regard to the question, is openness, the way you're describing it, also going to require that we open our lives completely as part of the accountability? And if not, what is the role of personal information and how we control our personal information in our beginning to exert the kind of power you're describing?
Well, let me answer that at a couple levels. First off, I think we should control our own information. I mean, Anne Branscombe has done a book on who owns your information, and you don't own your name and address. The post office does. Something wrong with that. So what I want is a Cisco router where all of my information is on there with robust data at rest encryption. And I want to be able to control who sees my information. And anytime anyone touches my social security number, I want to have a Cisco application-oriented network rules-based approach to who gets to see my information. Now, that's probably 20 years out. And John Chambers and guys like this are not paying attention to me. They're too busy thinking about how do they monetize their next quarter. Very candidly, if I were president or if I were head of the FBI today, I would significantly upgrade the luxury at Guantanamo, and I would take Bill Gates and John Gage and Vince Cerf and Larry Page and Eric Schmidt and Jonathan from Sun, and I'd take them down to Guantanamo and say, boys, you're not leaving here until we've learned how to play nice with one another. Our CEOs are not playing nice with one another, and they are our best hope. So if I have one takeaway message from here, which I would say you can blog, is why aren't Google and Sun and IBM and all these other guys asking the the Department of Commerce for an antitrust waiver for a national open source skunk works, which is what I would fund if I had an open source agency. I would fund a national open source skunk works that supported all of the opens, including open money. And I would see where that would take us. Now, at a second level, so the answer is no, we should not have to expose all our information. I mean, the Constitution is very clear on privacy and the liberty to bear arms, and I include radar detectors in there because I have a 1964 MGB that I've gotten up to 112, and I want to see if I can make 125. And by the way, you know, my biggest problem is not that the road, it's not that I can't get up there, it's that by the time I get to 115, 116, the next batch of cars is there, you know? So I think I'm going to have to go back to Iowa, which is where I did the 112. Okay, one quick answer, and then we'll come back. Okay, hang on. The third part of the answer is, people don't realize this, apart from the fact that NSA is 1950s mindsets with 1970s technologies, SAIC completely screwed up Trailblazer, Echelon is baloney. 80% of your signals intelligence comes from analysis of patterns. So you don't need to violate privacy. All you need to know is that Schmuckhead is calling Afghanistan once a week. Okay? Over here.
Okay. You mentioned one of your slides about the tactical side, and the tactical is the dark side is one bullet for one person. I didn't quite get that, but the next part of that sentence you said this, that, and the other without creating any black markets. And in a sense, a black market is essentially a market, an economy or a currency not controlled or monitored by government use. So in one sense, how can you reconcile the idea of doing all this, that, and the other without black markets? Yeah, wage peace without creating black markets. An open market, in a sense, could be construed as a black market by command and control economy.
Very interesting question. William Shawcross wrote a book called Deliver Us from Evil, in which he talked about the ineptness of our, because we don't do peace. Some microphone find him so his arm doesn't fall off. We don't do peace. And I am just blown away. I mean, General Shinseki knew exactly what was needed to make Iraq go right, and Paul Wolfowitz lied to Congress and said they'll receive us like liberators and stuff. If I had been General Shinseki, I would have grabbed Wolfowitz by the neck and thrown him down the steps of Capitol Hill. You don't let people lie like that. It's unprofessional to confuse loyalty with integrity. And we have had a failure of generalship in America. Our generals have been too eager to keep their stars and not eager enough to think for themselves and uphold the Constitution. So I believe in open money. I don't think it's a black market unless, like Foucault or whoever says, you're the government and you want to say that what is good is bad and what is open is closed and what is white is black. The power to define the terms are what make us a free people. Yes, sir.
In your opinion, what role do secret societies have in information suppression, if any?
All right. Do you want me to do the alien version or the banking version?
You can do well, at least tell us what the
All right, I'll do the banking version. I think Rule by Secrecy is a very good book. I reviewed it very favorably. I actually did my first graduate thesis was on predicting revolution. My mini thesis was on the origin of the state. And originally, secret societies were actually used as a means of planning things that were against the monarchies and the oppressive liberators. So secret societies do have a role on a democratic side, and there's a wonderful war game, or there's a wonderful game that you can play that teaches you how to create a democratic force inside of a totalitarian society without being revealed early enough so they can go in and chop off the head. So there's a good part to secret societies. If you read my review of Rule by Secrecy, I reviewed everything right up to the alien part. The alien part, I'm not prepared to reject completely, but it's too much for now. I do believe there is extraterrestrial intelligence. I do believe that at some point we may be found wanting. But more importantly, I am absolutely certain that central banks are an evil. Central banks are screwing us all, or we'll have it right. We are pigs being harvested for profits. Okay? So the sooner we get a grip on open money, the sooner we stop buying stocks, the sooner we stop being captive to this system that demands that we be serfs, the sooner we'll do well. I do believe there are secret societies, although, you know, given a choice between conspiracy and incompetence, I generally go with incompetence. The Bilderberg Group, I just saw a list of who attended the last time, and it's almost a list of nobodies who want to be somebodies combined with somebodies on their way down. You know, I'm not that impressed. These people think they're the movers and the shakers. They're only the movers and the shakers as long as you let them be the movers and the shakers. Does that answer your question? Okay, who's next? Okay.
Hi, I just got back from D.C. maybe a week ago, where I lobbied Congress with Soma FM and Bagel Radio to save internet radio. So I kind of wanted to ask you about the very micro level of the way that changes can be made, and where you stand on what's happening with internet radio. I mean, Tom from Pandora is here somewhere. Internet radio, what you listen to at work and all that, streaming, Pandora, it's going away. It's going away. And there's a deadline now by Labor Day that was set by Brownback and Wyden.
right.
So we need your help, really.
Well,
bad.
I'm not in a position to help you, but I'll tell you, I have a radio show on We the People Radio, Wednesdays 8 to 10, except for next week when I'm in a war zone. And I believe in internet radio. I also believe that government only has the power you let them have. We should not be allowing the sale of bandwidth. We should not be allowing the closing down of internet radio. And I'm reminded that the first hackers were the ham radio operators, who were looked on as evil. Okay? So my answer, and I forget whether it was Thoreau or Emerson, but in an unjust society, the place for a just man is jail. In an unjust bandwidth environment, everybody should be a hacker, a ham radio operator, and screw them all. I'm saying whether it's illegal or legal, in the eyes of the government, you should be doing internet radio at the local level.
It's a different industry. They have to pay licenses to play music. They have to. There's no...
No, you're not thinking creatively enough.
I'm not.
All right, stop, because I'm not here to take your issue on the stage, all right? So stop. I'll make a comment, and then we'll go on to someone who's been waiting very patiently with another question. You don't have to work within the established bandwidth or within the established anything. When I was in the Marine Corps, we would have assigned sectors of operation, and I had this area, and I was given a mission to get from point A to point B, and the only road I could use was over in someone else's mission area or in someone else's area. And I failed the test. And then after the test, the guy said, "We were trying to teach you, you need to crush the box, not stay in the box." Okay? So as far as I'm concerned, there is no reason why you can't have neighborhood radio stations. No, we're not going to go there, okay? I'm telling you, you can have neighborhood radio stations. You can have Cisco routers that go outside the system. And if Cisco won't make them, then be the next Cisco, because I don't have time for them to make their minds up. Yes, sir. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you have... okay.
My name's Dave McClure, 500 Hats. I share a lot of your concerns. I guess I would love to hear more about more tactically actionable things that we can do. So I think blogging is helpful.
Let me give you my email, bear, B-E-A-R, @oss.net. I'll answer any reasonable question.
So my personal interest, I think, is that microfinance is actually an actionable step that people can take through organizations like Unitas and Kiva and Grameen. So I think that's a place that we can all make really tactical, actionable steps. I wonder what your opinion is on FOIA requests, Freedom of Information Act requests, making...
Back 200 years and then get Chinese bloggers to do that for us. And literally go into the books and stuff and do those little pens, you know, and then post them up, and then bang. I mean, millions and millions of Chinese bloggers, this is cool. And the other thing that I really feel is that the Freedom of Information Act is simply a way of keeping you busy. It's not going to help that much. And the last comment I'll make is I spent 18 years trying to help secret government agencies get in touch with unclassified information. And Tom Atlee sent me an email, and he had this little signature blog where Buckminster Fuller said, "Don't try and heal a broken system, create a new system that replaces it." So I'm honored to be here to set the tone for you guys. And my bottom line is, don't waste your time on the federal government. It's going away. There are 27 secessionist movements. There are 9 distinct nations in North America. And if the federal government does not get turned over in 2008, I anticipate some virtual separation in the Republic. Who's next? Andy? Okay. Oh, all right. Over there?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think this is on. Okay. First of all, thanks for a very interesting presentation. A lot of the issues that you've raised are very systemic. The two-party system or the educational problems, et cetera, et cetera. Us blogging about things starts raising the awareness a little bit, but that's just one part of what has to be a multifaceted solution. I think some of those big issues are fairly huge. What are some small issues that we could tackle that could start making a difference onto which we can build? And I'd love to hear your thoughts on some approachable ones.
Okay.
I mean, we all blog about the two-party system right now. So
No,
we can make
I got it. Let me say also first, thank you for reminding me. The two books that I read on the way here, one was called The Collapse of Complex Societies, and the other one was called Domestic Bases for Grand Strategy. First off, the one on the collapse of complex societies was absolutely, utterly fascinating. It was a work of genius. And it essentially says that societies collapse when the cost of micromanagement from the federal level is excessive, and the returns and efficacies that are gotten with that excessive cost are completely inadequate. Think Katrina. Okay, so what we're talking about here is localized resilience. All right? I believe the future of this republic depends on the resilience of its neighborhoods, and Lee Kuan Yew from Singapore would certainly agree with that. We have to make our neighborhoods resilient. There is a sweeping movement across the country called home rule. Counties and states are passing environmental protection laws that are proper and much more robust than the crap that the federal government is pushing out because it's been bought and paid for. So I would say to you, start at the neighborhood, village, municipality level and start blogging these 10 threats, 12 policies, because it makes no sense for Canada to be using water it doesn't have to push oil tar out of the sands, even if that water might end up in an aquifer 10,000 years from today. Okay? So really take charge from the local level up, bottom up, and all of these things can be applied, and I do believe in the common sense of the people. And I think that you're going to find that, like Vermont, for example, is all of a sudden going to be seen by the rest of America as exactly where we want to be, you know, or Seattle, whatever. And so that's called the spike theory of change. As soon as one state gets it perfect, it's going to spread like wildfire. Okay? Somebody tell me who's next. All right, and then we'll come over there. You've been very patient.
With the advancement of technology and the what I refer to as the constantly on, always recorded movement that we're headed into, do you see that as a Big Brother type of scenario, or is that more freeing for us? Because I've already run into a few because we are doing some live.
Yeah, you know, and I'm very indiscreet, so it scares me a little bit. The always on thing is a little troubling, but in a way it also is liberating. Particularly if you have peer communication. For example, I'm a Marine, so I may use the F word too much or whatever. But over time, I mean, I have my board of directors is from Seattle, John Raymer and a couple people, and I'll be having a conversation with them, and Sherry Herndon will like do this little signal thing, and she's just told me I've used a word that's not used in Seattle. Okay, and so by the end of dinner, I'm speaking Seattle. So if all of this stuff is out in the open, I think you start to get it. The last thing I'll say is from Crocodile Dundee, where, you know, he talks about how if you have a problem, you tell Harold, and Harold tells the whole village, and now it's not a problem anymore. So we have a lot of people coming out of the closet and stuff like this, and it's becoming an accepted, proper way of being. I mean, this is my take on it. I have a relative who is homosexual, and I did some research. It turns out we all start as women, and some of us end up as women, some of us end up as women-men, and some of us end up as men. It's genetic. End of the story, at least for me. I mean, I could understand that. This was like a Marine's explanation of life. Okay, you've just gotten it here. So anyway, yes, sir, you've been very patient. I think on balance, openness is good.
Thank you. So I kind of want to talk about two things that when I listen to you, I'm struck with the word religion. And it's both because you almost
Great question.
You didn't mention religion at all. There's one quick slide about what we should be doing, but unfortunately, religion very often is used as the galvanizing thing on people. And then that then builds on top of that. Needless to say, the people in the White House use that as an example to do what they do. You know, preventing stem cell research, for instance.
Got it.
So, but then at the other time, I think of you having a religion, that you are this religion and that you're very uncompromising. And that, because when I think about, for instance, open standards, I think, well, the game there is to compromise, to work with others so we can interconnect, for instance, social networks together. And I'm not going to just support HCard or microformats. I'm going to support FOF and Plaxo and Facebook and whatever platforms there are, because you have to support them all to be able to mesh together communities. So
yeah, okay, I've got
there's a
5
compromise
minutes, so
there.
this is going to be, I've got 5 minutes, this is going to be my last answer. Okay.
Great.
Let me give you a couple of groups on this. First off, extremist religions, both jihadist and Christian fundamentalist, are very evil. They're cults. Read my review of a book called American Fascists, and I also posted an image of the Nazi flag hanging down from the White House, which is very popular, in Seattle. Extreme anything. Joe Fox wrote a wonderful book, an IBM executive, wrote a wonderful book once, and he said, in which he said the opposite of vice is not virtue, it's virtue carried to an extreme, or you know what I'm saying there. The second thing I'll say is religion as faith, the golden rule, do unto others, that's extremely important. You know, that chart that I had in there, well, I guess I disconnected, or is it still connected? Oh, no, I unplugged the USB, which is my fault. So let me go back to that, because I think I want to end on that note. It's a wonderful note to end on. Actually, let's do slideshow view. Okay, I'm going to go through the brief again. All right, so we started here, and then we did this, and then this. Deja vu. Robin Williams. Okay. You've asked a really important question. I was brought up as a Colombian Jesuit Catholic, and then in my first marriage, I married a Methodist, so we became high Episcopal. And then in my second and final marriage, I married Southern Baptist, so we became Methodist. And then we had 3 children, and we became agnostic. But what we've learned out of all of this is that faith is not about God, it's about you and me. It's about community. It's about making the most of what we've got. It's not about hoarding. It's not about the concentration of wealth. It's not about being better than anyone else. I mean, I am not your average person in the sense of being into dignity and goodness and all this stuff, but I'm getting there. I mean, every time I come back to Seattle, I get a tiny bit better. We have to treat everyone with dignity, and we have to really adopt those things so we can get along. And you know this vastly better than I do, so I won't spend too much time on that, other than to say I encourage you to read my varied books that I've reviewed on religion. For example, The Left Hand of God, written by a rabbi, talks about how the Democratic Party has abandoned religion and has no clue about faith. At the same time that the Republicans, the extremist Republicans, have made war on science and have taken extremism and religion to new heights. There's also some wonderful books by Doug Johnson called Faith-Based Diplomacy, and he's written another one. And what he has found is that when we go out to negotiate with people, in the Middle East, if we take a prayer team and they pray and they come in and they audit the meeting and then they go back out and pray for the meeting to be successful, they're connecting with these Islamic people who are not jihadists at a core level that could not be achieved if Joe Bob comes in. You know, how are you? Good to be here. You know? We got a bunch of assholes overseas that don't know anything about integrating with the local culture. Okay? And the State Department, in its quest to diversity, is finding idiots in Kansas that think Hawaiian t-shirts are a tuxedo. Okay? Sorry. I like your tie. All right, I think I stopped there. God bless you. Thank you for letting me have here.
Thank you.
What you need to know is I'm a spy saying spying doesn't work. Okay, now General Zinni has a quote. He and I both opposed the war in Iraq. We were called traitors for our trouble. General Zinni is on record as saying that 80% of what he needed to know as the commander of the Central Command, with 12 wars going on in his AOR, was open source information. And if he knew where to look, meaning if he knew who to ask, another 16% was available to him. At the end of the day, only 4% of General Zinni's command information was coming from secret sources and methods. Well, today I publish a free Global Challenges the Week in Review covering the 10 threats, the 12 policies, and the 8 challengers at a cost of less than $1,000 a week. It's costing you $1.2 billion a week to produce the President's Daily Brief for a guy that can't read. 1.2 billion, 1,000. What's wrong with this picture? So we are idiots to be allowing our government to spend our hard-earned dollars, 60 billion, it's actually closer to 70 billion, for the 4% we can steal, next to nothing on open sources in 183 languages we don't speak. And our military-industrial complex is also idiocy, and General Smedley Butler, the highest decorated Marine, said, war is a racket. War is a racket. War is a racket, and the only reason it's happening is because the American public is lethargic. Blog that. You are the Paul Reveres and Patrick Henrys of our generation. Bottom-up horizontal connection is key. Sharing at all levels, not top-down control. There are 4 major reforms. This is very important, sophisticated stuff. I love Naomi Klein and No Logo and her new book coming out. If you bloggers self-organize and attach yourself like leeches to specific issues, corporations, organizations, challenges, whatever, you will be the intelligence Minutemen of this century. The power is in your hands. There aren't enough guns to kill us all, and Halliburton can't build the jails fast enough to keep us down. So I think we're at a turning point. I think Bezos is right. I think we're at the very beginning of a historic tidal shift in power, restoring the Constitution. National security reform, it's idiocy how we're spending the money. We can spend it much better. Reality-based budgeting, new concept. I don't know how many of you are following this, but the Comptroller General has told Congress the United States of America is insolvent. We're out of Schlitz. We literally have no money to make it to the next decade. Now, there's some very easy solutions. I could eliminate all income taxes tomorrow and have more than enough money to fund the government by using some other guy's bright idea. We tax the Federal Reserve at 0.0006, doubles our money until we decide to put them out of business permanently, because we certainly should not have central banks. And finally, I think before 2008, you should blog for electoral reform. Jim Turner, who was Ralph's honor to be here. I'm going to go real fast. Jeff and Andy, you're invited to dinner with John Raymer and Susan Kennan and some others if you can make it. Just thought I'd mention that. I'm going to go real fast. And what I found worked real well at Amazon, and you can download my 66-minute interaction with Amazon on Amazon as the hub of the world brain. And let me say that nothing I say is endorsed by Jeff Bezos. I'm not sure he even knows I'm on planet Earth. But I think Amazon is the hub of the world brain, and that's my pitch, not theirs. So I'm going to go real fast. I recommend that you try and see that briefing because you'll get a sense of the larger picture. In my view, bloggers and hackers, and I opened the first hackers conference in New York, Hackers on Planet Earth in 1994, and wearing sunglasses and a suit, and Jello Biafra, then a little-known artist, today presidential candidate for the Biafrans. He had the voiceover, and we had no idea in 1994 that it would nail Dick Cheney today. I am just absolutely stunned. And if you do nothing else, read my reviews of 1% Doctrine and Vice, Dick Cheney and the hijacking of the American presidency. That man is guilty of no fewer than 25 impeachable offenses, and I itemize them in my review. Yeah, and I'm an estranged moderate Republican. I don't know where the American fascists came from. Although CIA imported 100 Nazis a year, every year after World War II, and we have Otto Reich and Karl Rove as the the lower level generations. Okay, we're going to go fast here. I'm going to run through these slides at lightning speed just to give you an overall gestalt. How many people have already seen the brief? Okay, all right. Not many. Now we know the overachievers. Let me just go real fast. We're at the very beginning. Jeff Bezos has that right. Everything up to here, including Microsoft, has been shit. Okay? From here on out is where it really starts hyping up. Who am I? I was told I had to have this slide. Oil brat, 20 years in Latin America, infantry, recovering spy, overly educated. I'm not an IT guy, but I've done advanced IT, and I've helped create the steering groups for the CIA and others. And I am the world's most pissed off end user. None of you can hold a candle to me. So we're going to go real fast, and this time I'm just going to tell you, public intelligence and influence is about to take off. We are about to bury rule by secrecy. Civil affairs is the focal point. The intelligence guys need to go back in their box. Bloggers, not informants, are key. The FBI is about to try and hire 2,000 informants in a Soviet police-style approach to security. That's idiocy. For reforms, Ron Paul, I didn't have a chance to put in my image there, but I believe we're going to have to come back to transpartisanship. It was very serious, relative cost war versus peace. This is how we're going to do it. Like this guy, like this, like this. Let's go back to that. Okay, hardware. Come back to that. Open money. Nice. Open culture, open networks. Oh, this is a great slide. We'll spend 5 hours on this one. Open society, open government. Other opens, including open carry. Blog this. Open carry across the country. That's that pistol down there in the bottom. And, oh, by the way, I think radar detectors are covered by the founder's intention that we be able to defend ourselves. So then we'll talk about what a shitty world the last 50 years have created. And then maybe start on bloggers and what you can do. Amazon is the hub. Really high-level intellectual stuff. Why we're going to win. This is a very serious slide. Next step, warning notice. Warning, warning, warning. For the truly indiscriminate, share it all. Okay, open everything, you rule. But bloggers, as they are now, don't rule. Bloggers, as Linux is organized, where you grab onto an issue or something and you are part of a structured citizen journalism blogging thing that lets no evil doing go unnoticed, that rules. I'll speak for sushi, I'm cheap, but it has to be really good sushi. This brief is at /genome, but look for 4.2. This is what I've created before I go. I am not making this up. Dare to want it all. All right, any questions? All right, now we'll go through it a little slower. And I have words in the notes format. You know, Mark Twain said if I'd had a little more time, I would have written a shorter letter. So the words in the notes format are all of the things that I very cleverly calculated you absolutely had to know. But here I'm going to go fairly fast.